Mark, good to go? Okay, welcome to this final Migration and Movement Signature Research Theme event of the spring term. The Signature Research Theme exists to generate cross-disciplinary and cross-sector conversations on the broad questions of migration and movement, questions which are very much with us at the present moment. My name is David Hurd, and I'm part of the Signature Research Theme leadership team. We are honoured in this final event of the term. We're honoured in this final event of the term to be hosting a discussion of writing and exile as part of the UK launch of the e-book Exilio y Memoria, a publication that has emerged out of the work of the Colombian Truth Commission. I won't say more about the book because Peter Drury, next to me here, one of its editors, will introduce it in a moment. The panel discussion will address the question of writing and exile from various perspectives, and there will be an opportunity for audience members, in person and online, to ask questions at the end. The panel, which will last approximately an hour, will be followed by readings from the book in person and on film. So to introduce our panelists, Peter Drury is a human rights researcher and campaigner whose research work over many years has largely focused on Colombia. He worked in the Colombia research team of Amnesty International for over 20 years and has worked for Oxfam and Global Witness and as a Peace Brigade's international volunteer in Colombia. He is a PhD candidate at Kent Law School, we're very pleased to say, on corporate accountability issues in Colombia, and is the representative of the Colombian Commission for the Clarification of Truth, Coexistence and Non-Repetition in the UK. Sandra Dixon, next to Peter, is a chemical engineer and a human rights activist who was shot by the police during a student demonstration at the Universidad Nacional de Colombia in 1995, and subsequently faced serious intimidation at the hands of the police. She left Colombia in 2007 and moved to the UK. She is one of the founders of SOS Colombia UK, a Colombian human rights organisation. She has worked closely with the Colombian Truth Commission in the UK and Ireland and was one of the coordinators of a series of writing workshops with the exiled Colombian community. Exilio y Memoria stems primarily from this work. Cristina Hernandez is a PhD student from the Universidad de los Andes, who is currently part of the Erasmus Exchange Programme at the University of Kent. Her research focuses on the relational ecologies that inhabit the Magdalena River. This project was developed with one of the biggest fisher and farmer organisations in Colombia called the Magdalena Programme for Peace and Development. And speaking last on this panel, but not least at all, Basma Doukhi is Palestinian. She received a fully funded GCDC scholarship from the University of Kent to study for a PhD in migration studies, and she has a master's degree in development and emergency practice from Oxford Brookes University. She has been active in humanitarian and development work with displaced people for the past 12 years and has engaged in a range of interventions with such agencies as UNHCR, UNRWA, OCHA, and many international NGOs. She is dedicated to and passionate about refugee protection, humanitarian action, advocacy, campaigning, and community outreach. Peter, Sandra, Cristina, and Basma will each speak for up to 7 minutes, and I will be very strict with the timing. And then, after a series of questions from me, we will invite questions from the audience. So, I'll hand over to Peter, with pleasure.
Thank you very much. Well, what I did want to do is give a brief overview of what the Commission is and the work of the Commission and a little bit of background to the book. But I think Sandra will give you a bit more information about the digital book, it's the e-book itself. So the Truth Commission is part of the transitional justice system, which was created following the peace accord between the FARC guerrilla and the Colombian government in 2016. The system is comprised of 3 mechanisms: the Jurisdicción Especial por la Paz, or the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, which is a tribunal system, a criminal tribunal system empowered to order reduced sentences or alternative punishments in cases where guilty parties tell the truth about their crimes, and contribute to clarifying the facts. There is also two non-judicial bodies, humanitarian bodies, the Unidad de Búsqueda de Personas Dadas por Desaparecidas, or the Search Unit for Presumably Disappeared Persons, dedicated to search for the thousands of people disappeared in the course of the armed conflict, and the Comisión para el Esclarecimiento de la Verdad, la Convivencia y la No Repetición, or Comisión de la Verdad, so the Commission for the Clarification of the Truth, Coexistence and Non-Recurrence, which is known as the Truth Commission. The Truth Commission seeks to clarify what happened during the conflict, and in so doing recognise the violations and abuses victims and survivors faced during the conflict. The Commission seeks to clarify the truth of the human rights abuses and violations during the Colombian conflict and uncover what was behind these crimes, recognise and acknowledge the truth of the human rights violations and abuses faced by victims and survivors, and promote coexistence, to search for a route to end the acute polarisation of Colombian society. In effect, we're working towards the non-repetition of violence. The final report of the Commission will be launched on the 22nd of June, and it seeks to establish the collective responsibilities behind the violence, not just of the armed forces, the security forces, guerrilla forces and paramilitary forces, but also political, economic and other sectors of civil society, including international interests. The report seeks to be a tool for Colombian civil society to be able to demand action to dismantle and confront interests and structures responsible for the violence, and those benefiting from the violence, and to end the impunity that ensures the ongoing violence. In effect, the launch of the report is not the end of the process, it's the beginning of the process. The existence of the Truth Commission owes much to the demands of the Colombian victims movement to the negotiating parties during the Colombian peace process. The Commission not only owes its existence to the victims movement, it seeks to ensure that victims have a central role in its work. The testimonies gathered from victims and survivors is the core of the information on which the Commission is relying to undertake its work. Many of these testimonies have been gathered by victims and survivors themselves, including Marta Inestroza, one of the participants in today's event. In carrying out its work, the Commission has also sought the testimonies of perpetrators and experts in an effort to gain a complete picture that captures the complexity of the conflict. This includes the fact that violence has been normalised in the context of the conflict, and sometimes, at least, perpetrators have also been the victims. The Commission's work seeks to contribute to coexistence, partly as a means to end the extent to which this violence is normalised. The Commission has sought to understand how the different ways the conflict has impacted on different sectors of Colombian society. This has involved documented and understanding, for example, the impact on women. For example, how the armed actors in the conflict have frequently targeted women with sexual violence as a means to express control and as a means to enhance terror. The impact on children, on indigenous, Afro-descendant, peasant farmers and other communities, on the LGBTQ+ population, a sector targeted for violence, often for not conforming to the social norms imposed by different armed groups. This commission, in contrast to previous Truth Commissions, has invested much effort in documenting exile, recognising exile as one of the violations of the conflict, the way exile has split families, damaged social networks, just to mention some of the impacts. In working for exile, the Commission has sought to expose what exile means for second-generation Colombians as well. Colombian exile has been an issue largely ignored in Colombia and internationally. The Commission hopes to help shed light on this violation. And this ties in with the Commission's work to recognise and acknowledge what has happened to victims. And this is a crucial aspect of its work. Why is recognition and acknowledgement so vital? Over decades of armed conflict, the perpetrators of violations have enjoyed a high degree of impunity. Impunity is not accidental. It is an integral part of military tactics. It is a way of enhancing terror. It sends a clear message to victims and their families: if you complain about this, the same thing is going to happen to you. Who's going to believe you anyway? Who's going to investigate this? In this manner, victims have often had to bear the burden of what they faced. And when they flee into exile, this burden is often exacerbated by stereotypes and prejudice. So many Colombians, exile Colombians will say, when I say I'm Colombian, Pablo Escobar, drugs. In that context, I can't unburden myself. No one's going to believe me. The work of the Commission then has been to try and recognise, acknowledge the reality of what victims have faced. And we've done this through a whole variety of different activities, not just gathering testimonies, but a whole variety of activities like public events, musical workshops, and so on. The digital book is one example of this work. We wanted people to, in participating in the workshops that were organised over the course of last year, for people to use writing as a means to reach inside and extract, confront, and come to terms with what is often hidden. That's what I hope the writing experience has helped for many people. The Commission is not a medical agency, but the process of giving one's testimony hopefully helps unburden people to unburden what they faced. And so, as we're not a medical agency, we've also supported psychosocial work in the UK and other parts of the country, of the world. The report launch is it's on the 22nd of June. I'm going to wrap up now. Just to quickly say, part of the purpose of this event is to seek international support. We need international support to create space for the Commission, for its report, because we know that the recommendations are about confronting vested interests, and that needs a lot of political space and support. So I'll stop there. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Peter. Now hand over to Sandra. Thank you.
Okay. For me, it's an honor to be able to present this collective work, and I'm just going to give to you the introduction of the book, where you can know what we did and why we did. So the content of this digital book is the result of a series of virtual writing workshops in which Colombian exiled in the UK and the United Kingdom participate as well some contribution from people in exile in other countries. The initial idea was to create a safe space where, with full confidence, the participant could not only write but also socialize the full load of emotions and feelings caused by their conditions in the exile. I don't know how to write, some of them say, but for the proposal of this exercise of writing a digital book, that shouldn't be an impediment. On the contrary, the value of this book lies precisely in the strength of the testimonies that we express in verse or in prose. This type of writing also made it possible to bring to the surface what was hidden and imprisoned in the dark corners or the inner being. For this reason, the different artistic contributions capture here the feelings, joys, and sorrows as a record of historical memory, as a way of telling our truth, of resisting oblivion, and facing the weight of exile. This writing session becomes a way of fresh air, so that the participants decide to catch up on paper the nostalgia, the broken and repressive lives since we were forced to leave the country, in many cases, the pain and rotting suffering long before crossing national borders to save their lives. Perhaps it served many of us to learn to lean out the windows of exiles and shoot all the torrent of words choked in our chests for years and finally receiving a supported ears. Although this was not a space created for the exercise and practice of refined literature or a high aesthetic literacy, we are sure that brilliant pieces were achieved, but where not only the pain of the exile of those who had to live is recorded, but also the isolation of those who were left behind at the mercy of the violence that did not give up before, and that doesn't not give up after 5 years of signing the final peace agreement between the Colombian government and the FARC guerrillas. The text opened with a prologue, with a foreword, written by the poet Anabel Torres, and the book is divided in 5 chapters. The first chapter is called Raíces, or Roots. The second is called La Horrible Noche, or the Horror Night. The third one is called Añoranzas or Longing, and the fourth one is called Resistencia. In Roots, basically, we do a compilation of the happy memories of our country, and in there we basically evoke all the things we're missing from our country, our floods, the Urquina volcano, the war of the Ruana, and our families, and our rivers, and our mountains, and all of that. In the second part, the Horrible Noche, or the Horror Night, we did a compilation of the condition we have to live in Colombia and made us to flee. In the third part, in Añoranzas or Longing, we put all the writing about how we are in the exile, how we have to live, what are the experiences here, the good and the bad. And as well as they say, as the word Añoranzas or Longing means what we're still missing. And in the fourth one, charter, we just talk about how our resistance to, how our resilience and to our resistance to the war and to all the horror we have to live is still giving us life. How we find ourselves again when we resist and carry on trying to make a better world from wherever we are as a part of the humanity. In each charter is an illustration done by artista Camila Marin, a Colombian artist, and an introduction from Anabel Torres. And this captures every moment of the book. Each one of them is show what is going on in the book. At the end of each charter, as well, we put some videos that are testimonies from people who are in the exile and from the second and the third generation in the exile, talking about it. Also, we put as well some other works, like for example the textile workshop that was held in support of the conflict textile, an initiative of several artists based in the production of burla dolls using textile language, make a contribution to the construction of memory and truth. As a result, this book shows the path of this experience and a final banner that presents the collective work for the exile community working with the Truth Commission. As well, it's important to mention the Grupo de Familiares de Personas Desaparecidas en Europa. It's the family group of people who have disappeared. They are in Europe. And this gives us an account of the activity journey of this artistic work in the exile. We got as well some painting from Andrés Pérez Berrío that is linked to disappearance, and a gallery as well who allow us to go to the memories. One moment? Okay. The Truth Commission has worked for more than a year collecting the testimony of victims and survivors from the Colombian conflict in order to record the truth of what happened and recognize the truth. The text of the book also touched the deep feelings of those truths and that the entire Colombian society, as well in the international community, know the truth of Colombia and outside Colombia. The stories and verses on the participants, as well as the various artistic work, show the enormous capacity of resiliencia in this long, painful process of exile and uprooting. With this, the truth and the hope of meeting again in the construction of a new country where we all fit is also writing on the sky. Hopefully this work echoes the feelings of exiled people, victims of the conflict who did not participate in this process, so that they feel recognized and served as an indelible legacy of the true Colombian in exile. Our eternal thanks to all the people who participate in one way or another in the creation of this work of memory and exile. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Cristina? Yeah, please, yeah. Thank you very much. Cristina?
Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much to all the exiled community people that are here. for making this place nicer and warmer. We can all feel the instant effect of the Colombians arriving to Canterbury. I am going to share with you a little bit the reactions of, that I had after reading this amazing book that I invite you all to read. It's like really a very like transforming experience. Reading the poems of the Colombian exile community in the United Kingdom connected me with the memories of another exiled poet I met in Las Pavas, a place in the middle of one of the Magdalena River branches called Isla de Papayal, the Papayal Island. His name is Efraín Alvear, and he lives another kind of exile that a lot of Colombians experienced in their own land, internal displacement. Forced to leave the place where he had his roots of yuca, ñame, plantain, and rice, where he had his animals and the own roots of his stomach, head, and heart. Don Efraín had to leave Las Pavas because of death threats from the paramilitary forces against his lives, and the lives of anyone else from Las Pavas who set foot on lands that overnight had been seized for the industrial cultivation of African palm. Don Efraín, Don Misael, Doña Edith, and all Las Pavas community lost their roots and stayed at their homes in Buenos Aires, another place in the middle of the Isla de Papayal, without any chance of working the land. The uprooting of the yuca, rice, and plantain by heavy machinery and earth movers to replace them with African palm is a trauma that is repeated every now and then by the same actors with increasing violence. A way of surviving Don Efraín has found and shared is through writing. Don Efra, the way that I called him, not only kept a record of what has happened every day since the displacement occurred, but wrote songs, poems, and stories. Writing was an ultimate way of surviving. One of the diaries he kept in the moments where we met in 2012 finished with a sentence that described the dignity of the campesinos, the farmers, that stood against the paramilitary forces protecting the African palm. Esto es una conquista sin fusil, it said, or this is a conquest without rifle. Another of the pieces Efraín shared with me is a song he wrote when the inhabitants of Las Pavas were gathered in the place where the public school had stood. I'm going to share this song. Avancemos en pasos firmes a cosechar esta labor, a disfrutar el beneficio que es el fruto de la unión, y tendré una casa y también donde labrar. I'll try to translate it. Let's advance with strong steps to harvest this work, to enjoy the blessing that is fruit of unity, and I will have a house and also a place to carve. Sharing these writings in the way that Don Efraín shared them with me gives a sense of writing for surviving related to sharing with others and finding other meanings in moments when one feels there is no sense. Reading as a Colombian in the UK the writings of other Colombians in this country brought me tears and laughs and made me remember Don Efraín's stories. El día en que yo spent a penny, it's a story contained in the book that is really funny, and it's about the multiple interpretations that in Spanish and English the word penny can have. Wrote by Maria Victoria Cristancho, begins with these frosty mañanas or frosty mornings, and the current Spanglish misunderstanding one has here all the time. Thanks to Maria Victoria for giving one of these frosty mañanas another meaning, and to all the Colombian exiled writers for sharing this experience with us.
Thank you very much, Cristina. And thanks especially for giving us that phrase, writing is surviving. I'm sure we'll come back to that in the discussion, so thank you. And to give us a further perspective on writing and exile, Basma, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming, and apologies for being late or for coming late. Thank you so much. I am Basma Doukhi. I am a third generation of stateless Palestinian refugees. And why I am starting by this, to mention that it's not a question of vulnerability, but it's a question of need to justice and seek for justice, and to express the importance of writing in exile for generations, to hold the writers accountable to their experiences, but as well to ask ourselves about our experiences in exile, in displacement, and dispositions. I will mention two main writers which have shaped my personality, lived personality, and humanitarian practitioner personality and identity. Ghassan Kanafani and his novel Men in the Sun, رجال في الشمس. By the way, I am a strong advocate for men in displacement and for trying to understand and explore and listen to men in displacement inspired by the stories of loss, exile, masculinity, suffering of my father and my grandfathers and all the men that I have worked with, seen, interacted in the camps of Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Iraq. So I feel accountable that I bring this particular novel of Ghassan Kanafani to speak about men in displacement, men, how they write their stories, why we should listen to them, and why we should hold these writers that reflect these stories accountable to the novels and to the stories they are mentioning. And the second one is my idol. I think it's the word idol as well, Mahmoud Darwish. And if it's really fair, he and Ghassan Kanafani would win Nobel Prize. But we know it's politics. It's politics. But for me, they won it from long time ago. Saeed, yeah, to be very frank, Saeed, Edward Said, which is a Palestinian, he reflected when he wrote about Reflections on Exile book, he gave us a very strong warning that it's very terrible to experience exile. So I will start by this statement. We don't have to beautify exile. It's very terrible for the people who are experiencing exile. And that's why men should be acknowledged for their experiences and suffering and losses and agency as well. This paper will speak about my point of view as a third generation of Palestinian refugee who have given this novel by her grandfather. Maybe at that time he wanted me to understand his story, but from different perspective. My grandfather gave me this novel at the age of 13, and I had carried all the suffering and the emotions in this story, in this novel, at the age of 13, to understand the experiences of men in displacement. So this reflection is about how I take this novel from the personal lived experience, but how this impacted my humanitarian practice and how this made me a very strong advocate in united with all the work that I have done for inclusion of men, not only inclusion, for actually acknowledgement of the experiences of men, and start to find safe spaces, confidential spaces for men to express and to seek heal. I am coming from Middle East. This is a taboo as well for most of the men to say that we are suffering, we need help, we need support. And us, people who work with these people, we don't acknowledge their experiences. We just focus, with all my respect, for women and girls, but we left behind men and boys. In our intervention, and as a humanitarian practitioner, I confess this. But I know that people are watching me, so that's fine. Okay, so the Palestinian literature is very particular and unique because for me as a third point of view who have read this, it's a literature of suffering. It's a literature of archiving the exile dispositions and displacement that our grandparents have suffered, and we are still suffering in Palestine, in the camps of displacement and in diaspora all around the world. We are still suffering this, but at the same time, it's also symbolize our trauma, our journey, and it's explain about the temporality beyond the past, beyond the present, but also seeking future justice against oppression and injustice that Palestinians in diaspora, Palestinians in Palestine, Palestinians in the camps still facing every day. رجال في الشمس, or Men in the Sun, it was a story which is very similar. He was unique, actually. Ghassan Kanafani was unique, and I can see that he saw what will happen later on. He described a story of three men from the lost generation, the old generation, the young generation, seeking to leave camps in Iraq, to go to Kuwait at that time in order to work in oil boom, using truck, traveling illegally to seek better opportunities, livelihood opportunities, and better future for themselves and for their families as well. And at the end of the day, they died. Ghassan Kanafani mentioned it very loudly in this novel. Palestinians die in silence. because these men, at the end of the story, they died because they were not able to knock the door or the truck. And it was symbolic by Ghassan Kanafani to tell us that Palestinians die in silence, will die in silence, but third generation of Palestinians or of refugees now get the lesson. I get angry, and still I am angry of Ghassan Kanafani, why he ended his story by people dying in the truck and not even knocking the truck to let the driver, who by the way is Palestinian as well, helping them to cross Kuwait to Iraq, why he left them die. I had spent multiple years angry of him, why he did not make these people just knock the truck. And I get the lesson. Now, Palestinians, displaced people, oppressed people have to be vocal, have to speak about their experience. We knock the truck every day. Displaced people knock the truck and speak about experience every time. So I get the lesson, but I am still angry of him. And if he is alive, I will be accountable to ask him this question. I get some of the quotes from the novel about his writing, but I will read it in Arabic. I hope you can get the feeling from Arabic. إنني لا أريد أن أكره أحد، ليس بوسعي أن أفعل ذلك حتى لو أردت. أريد أن أستريح، أتمدد، أستلقي في الذل، وأفكر أو لا أفكر. لا أريد أن أتحرك قط. لقد تعبت في حياتي بشكل أكثر من كاف. إيه والله أكثر من كاف. الأمور تمضي بشكل أفضل حين لا يقسم المرء بشرفه. ليس this is the one that I wanted to tell you. لماذا لم يدقوا جدار الخزان؟ دار حول نفسه دورة، ولكنه خشي أن يقع فصعد إلى الدرج إلى مقعده وأسند رأسه فوق المقود. لماذا لم تدقوا جدران الخزان؟ لماذا لم تقولوا لماذا؟ إنهم لا يعرفون ذلك قط، لا يعرفون شيئا، ثم يطعمون لتعليم الناس كل الأشياء. كلهم يتحدثون عن الطريق، يقولون تجد نفسك على الطريق، وهم لا يعرفون من الطريق إلا لونها الأسود وأرصفته. ورغم ذلك فإنه لا يكره أباه إلى هذا الحد لسبب بسيط، هو أن أباه ما زال يحبهم جميعا. ومحمود درويش says احمل وطنك في قلبك وكن نرجسيا إذا لزم الأمر. كانت تسمى فلسطين، صارت تسمى فلسطين، هي أم البدايات وهي أم النهايات. شكرا جزيلا.
Well, thank you everybody for these powerful contributions, and I'm just going to open the discussion up with a series of questions just around the general issues that surface when we're talking about writing and exile, and then after that we can open the conversation up to people in the room and on the stream. So my first question for all of you, or any of you, is in your experience, and we've been talking about this obviously, in your experience, how can what we call creative writing, poetry or fiction, how can creative writing deepen our understanding of the realities of exile? Yeah, Sandra, please. Yeah.
Basically, I think all the art can serve to give a message. I think the art in general help to communicate to people the feelings, the experience, and more. In the case of writing, I think it's quite a powerful weapon, called poetry or called just narrative. It's a very powerful weapon to say what happened and to tell the truth that the other doesn't know, and to communicate and to get with the others. In the term of exile, when we fled the country, all what happened is gone with us and it's hiding. And it is important to put it out, and it is important to socialize to other people, to tell as well our truth, and to be able to see the truth of the other who were as well in the conflict, and to see how we can unite together, what is the point of, what points, what grounds are for most of us, for all of us, and to see how can we as build a new kind of society, who are more inclusive, who are more open, and who are more supportive to all of us. So for us, it's important as well to write, because we can say with words, paint with words, all our pain as well, all what we have to live, and also to try to avoid for the further generations, because the only way to avoid to repeat the history is to know the history.
Thank you. Thank you. Peter, do you want to come in?
Just, yeah, thanks, Sandra. That was a good point. I think one of the things, writing, like other forms of art, is a way of possibly reaching inside, expressing the unexpressible, things that people don't want to put into words. So sometimes writing, like other forms of art, has that capacity, ability. I think writing is also important for the reader. It's the fact that it's a way of the survivor being able to tell their story and actually be listened to more attentively sometimes. Sometimes when people sit down and hear a tragic story, they may put up their defences and say, well, I can't handle this. But art possibly provides a way of circumventing those defences, getting round the back, and suddenly a word, a turn of phrase hits you and helps you reach out to the human part of the story, not the statistic. And this links into another thing which I think Sandra was making reference to. This whole process of the Commission is also about helping bring people together, this highly polarised society. Hopefully by people expressing their feelings in writing, you can show that even if you are the victim of different sides of the conflict, the human feeling is the same. If your mother is being killed, your brother's being killed, whatever, the feeling is no doubt very, very similar, if not the same. And it's about saying suffering is human. So that's another thing. Finally, a couple more things. One is that writing and other forms of art are about communicating outside. I think I said that already. And also it's about taking control, about the fact that by being able to express the inexpressible, you are controlling the trauma. You are deciding how to tell your story. And I think that's very important. It's a way of breaking the silence, which is part and parcel of this process.
Did that sense of agency come through in the composition of the book as you're putting the book together? Did you get that sense of agency in writing?
Interesting to hear from the other Sandra and the other authors, but one other thing I would say yes is, particularly in the fact that at the very beginning of the process, people were saying, "Oh, no, I can't possibly do this. I can't write. I can't put my feelings down." And suddenly through the workshops that Sandra and Carlos and other people coordinated, these things started coming out to the fore. So I think it provided agency, but Sandra may have an opinion on that.
Yeah, definitely, we can see that process. And also, as we say, we didn't look to make the best artist work we could. We just tried to put our feelings in words and to put it out in the best way we could. So that's the value of this book. If anyone is really trying to find a finest artist and the Nobel Prize, no, we're not going to get it. But we don't care. We just want to tell our stories. And I also want to add something, and it's the fact that we can find the humanity in others, but we're still rebelling, and we're still denouncing, we're still accusing the regiment and the people who are getting money from us, getting the power from us, the state who force us to flee. Because it is important to put as well out, no?
Sure.
It's not just now everybody friend, no.
Yeah.
We have to put as well our resistance.
Thank you. And Basma, Cristina, do you want to come in on this, on how writing deepens our understanding of the realities of exile?
Yeah, thank you for the question. From a third generation perspective of refugees, it helped me actually to understand the plight and the experiences of my grandparents and of my community being forcibly expelled from Palestine, and also understanding the experiences after displacement, living in the camps, and also trying to manage all the changes at the level of a family, at the level of a community. And actually, for me, because I am angry. I am really angry, and every time I am angry of all the injustice around the world, and like writing set my anger in a right place. So I know now my battles. I know where should I focus my energy, how I advocate for refugees, how I can uphold all these values. And it's made me also connected to other causes in this world, because I worked with other displaced people. So I can understand, I can feel, I can see where are the areas that are very important in writing and in exile. And the last point, it was part of my healing. When I was able to feel angry, when I was able to question very big questions about the poetry of Mahmoud Darwish, and particularly the novel of Ghassan Kanafani, I felt that I was able to heal, and I was able to understand the experience of my grandfather and my father, and I was able to use this in understanding and responsibility. Because when you understand, you have to be responsible. I carry this responsibility in my work. So I start to advocate to give places for men, to give safe and confidential places, and to work with men and boys in displacement as we work with women and girls. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe we'll move on to the next question, if that's okay, unless you want to come in on this question. Cristina?
No, I think I will add something very small related to also to the book, to this chapter about the horrible night and this question that you make. And is that writing is also a way of, and also as Basma is saying, like of getting a testimony towards those who were condemned to silence or to die in silence. That is the way that you said it. And I think that also if you see these like poems, there is a lot of resistance, but also a way of people to know a story that was condemned to be silent. So writing is like a way of approaching to something that was not supposed to be, no? So there is like something almost mystical in the writing of a story that was not meant to be alive.
Thank you. It's powerfully put. Thank you. Basma has already taken us towards this next question, which is it helpful or unhelpful to think about writing in the context of exile as having a therapeutic function?
Okay. In my opinion, it can work as a therapy when you can express what you feel, but also can make free so many feelings and can make you feel really bad because of what you're writing. Because many of us, it's many of friends who never tell the story. They just want to forget. When you are out, sometimes you don't want even remember or talk about it. Many of us didn't even tell their children yet about what happened. And to do it is sometimes live it through it as well, and it's painful. So it does help sometimes, but also could be a very painful way to do it. In that case, we really need psychological support because it's hard. Sure. But also when you can speak, when you can get that out, it could it could make you feel like other people can understand you, and can you see as well that other people have past experience who are similar, and maybe you can start to be better.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody else want to come in on this question of whether whether it's helpful or unhelpful to think about writing as therapeutic in the context of exile? Peter?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd use the word necessarily therapeutic, but right. I think just to pick up on something I was saying earlier, it is about unburdening. The point is we've got many victims and survivors have been forced into silence. They carry this burden, so at least writing is one of the many ways the Commission at least has been offering people a chance to tell their truth, to express their truths, whether it's in a direct fashion, in just standing up and saying this is my story, or in a poetic fashion. And I think that, in a sense, it's more about beginning to release those burdens. In that sense, it may have some kind of alleviating those weights. But also it ties in very much with power and truth, the fact that if you're not listened to, then your truth is not listened to. Truth is linked to power, I think, for José, and I think there is it's about empowering people again and giving back their dignity, which is another integral part of this work. So I'd say it's more about confronting the silence, but by acknowledging that what I was saying earlier as well, that you know, we realise that many people carry traumas which require specialist psychosocial support, and the Commission therefore has provided separately, has sought to find organisations and psychologists to provide that support. This is a parallel and hopefully complementary process.
Sorry,
Yes,
Cristina.
I think that there is, it was a huge process that began with the institutionalization of transitional justice as something huge in Colombia, with the Truth Commission, what is going to be the special jurisdiction, and the unit for searching for people that are disappeared. It was like a huge social movement of how is society going to react to see its own truth, and how is society going to react to see its own trauma that wants to be silent through the most violent ways. And I think that we are still like in a social therapy, and it involves, of course, a lot of politics, a lot of change in the way that politics have been made. But I think that it's also like through the way of politics that in a bigger way this therapeutal like seeking of truth, that where the Truth Commission, of course, is like one of its biggest like seekers, where you can see like these changes happening.
Thank you.
One idea was it's also very helpful, like because it put writing in exile and reading from people who face that kind of exile, put you in the shape of understanding the collective experience, but also makes you understand what kind of causes you would like to take in your life, and how you are responsible and accountable. Accountability, it's a key point, and that's why we should write. We should keep writing, and we should advocate for writing in exile, because we need to hold people who should be accountable to accountability. Generations who never, for example, for me, I never been to Palestine, but I can tell you more about my village in Palestine because of the writings of the people that I get. So accountability, it's key. That's why I see it's very important as well, because also you feel accountable to your experience when you are able to express it, regardless of the way. Drawing, dancing, singing, shouting, I don't know, whatever. You feel accountable to share this story. And people feel accountable, at least, to understand your journey and your exile, and to figure out what, how, and why, and what should they do to understand, to raise awareness, and to feel responsible. Because as you see, you can be now, you might say, I am safe, I will not be ever a refugee, but who knows? Who knows? So that's why collectivity, and how we feel, how we understand, how we act. Accountability and action. This is how I see from the people that I respect from the Palestinian and Arab writers. Action and accountability.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I have many other questions, but we only have a few minutes left, and I'd like to open it both to the room and also to the live stream for questions. Is there anybody in the room, or is there anybody on the stream, perhaps being mediated by people in the room, has a question? Yeah, just here, question.
First of all, thank you for having us here and speak about refugees and all these important points. I just would like to highlight an important thing, and forgive my handle English, and that's this one to speak English. I just would like to highlight the situation in Ukraine. When the war has started, everyone felt interest to help and support the Ukrainian people and refugees, and definitely they deserve all the support. However, when some problems happen in Middle East, unfortunately, there is no one to give a hand or to give this support as what happened in Ukraine. I'm wondering what would be the reasons for such problem. Thank you.
Does anybody feel that they wanted to speak to that question?
I want.
Okay.
Just very quick.
Very quickly. Yeah.
Actually, I would advise you to read سجل أنا عربي for Mahmoud Darwish. Mahmoud Darwish know it from before that we do. It's about. Can I be very transparent? It's about race. It's about you are not white, you are not Christian, you don't belong to civilized Europe, so you are left behind. Go read Mahmoud Darwish. سجل أنا عربي لون عيوني بني ولوني أسمر اللون. He said it before. It's about race, nothing. But we have to be careful. At the end of the day, we are all humans. That's why I said collectivity. If you can feel with Palestinians, you can feel with Ukrainians. If you can feel with Colombians, you can feel with Ukrainian and Palestinians. Collectivity. We are humans. We have to reject this kind of narrative about the race and religion.
Thank you. Thank you. So there's an answer to that question.
Can
Thank you
I
so
say
much. Oh, yes,
something else?
please, Sandra. Yeah.
I think it's very important to realize that people around the world, we suffer many things, and they are basically different. It's two main poles, and it's one who is the people like Palestinian, Iranian, Peruvian, different nationalities, that's the population, and it's others who get power and money from us and keep the war in war. So basically, it's just, I think, we need to unite, like the communist said. Workers of the world united. That's what we have to do, really. And it's identify that. So what is behind the different treatment they give to different wars? The power.
So I can't give a very direct answer to your question, but one thing I do want to take this opportunity to say is that in documenting exile and recognising exile as one of the violations of the Colombian conflict, what we also want to do is to point out how refugees are being treated in different countries. So if we talk to the experience of refugee in the UK, for Colombian refugees anyway, a situation where, say, in the very early 80s, perhaps, the reception was much better. There was much more provision for refugees, to a situation now where there's an increasing practice of criminalising refugees, of othering. And I think it's an important opportunity to raise what's going on in Parliament at the moment, the British Parliament. These bills which are increasing, increasing prejudice against refugees, othering people, and part of the work of recognition of exile then is how other countries have treated Colombian exiles in this case, and calling on the international community to respect their obligations to the, under the Refugee Convention and so on, and not to other people, but to recognise that these are people who require exile because they're in danger.
Thank you for saying that. Okay, well, I think we have time for just a couple more questions. There's a question here, and I think maybe Barai has a question. Yeah, we won't be able to answer them all, unfortunately. We could maybe field them afterwards, but so there's a question just here first.
First of all, thank you very much for organizing this event, Peter, and also the whole Colombian community. I wanted to ask you, from an academic perspective, I have read a lot of critiques to transitional justice, and the limitations that this mechanism have. Also, the limitations of writing the truth from an institutional perspective or within the institutional frameworks. But I also know, because I also, as Cristina, I work as a human rights lawyer, I know that it's very difficult to criticize these institutional norms when they work for the people, when they are useful. No? So there is a tension between what we as academics know about these critiques and the practice. And I wonder if you have experienced that, because sometimes I have the feeling that the academic perspective forgets the experience of the people that are involved in this mechanism. So I wonder if you have somehow felt these tensions during the writing of this report, for this book and for Peter about the writing of the report in general. So thank you.
I think lots of the Colombian community in exile doesn't trust the state. And however, this came from peace agreement, the Truth Commission, la Justicia Transicional, and la Unidad de Búsqueda de Desaparecidos. However, they came from the state. Many of us still be cautious about it. Some of us just jump and say this is an opportunity to tell our truth, and we do. And also we help others, so we know the truth of others and we put it out. But it's still quite difficult for lots of us to go on to tell what is going on because we don't feel truth, we don't feel safe. Also, if you see in Colombia, after the peace process, it's more than 1,000 people, social leaders who have been killed, and more than 200 guerrillas people who give the weapons have been killed as well. So it's really hard to believe that things are going to change. And as a community, I see the people are afraid to tell the things. But some of us, maybe we are more flexible, we just take the risk. But others, no, I don't know. Peter maybe can complement it.
I think that last point that Sandra raises to some extent, points to the fact that there's lots of weaknesses and challenges facing the transitional justice system. And people, as Sandra said at the beginning, people are very sceptical about it as well. I mean, the whole thing is the Truth Commission, oh yeah, but what are you? You're part of the state, you're not part of the state, we can't trust you, or the other side will say, oh, you're a bunch of FARC sympathisers, and this sort of attack has been there. But many people have taken the plunge, so to speak. Many of the victims and survivors have finally said, well, no, we want to tell the truth. This is an opportunity to tell the truth. And in that sense, that's provided a dynamic which has pushed the process forward, which I think is important. I'm not sure it answers your question completely. In terms of academia, sometimes there's I get the impression sometimes there's a lot of studies of transitional justice, but they seem to forget how ordinary justice works, and the fact that transitional justice has to work with ordinary justice. And the two things work in interlock and actually play a game either in confronting impunity or consolidating it. Something that we need to discuss in much more detail. I realise that's a very, very simplistic answer. So there are limitations, but I'd argue that one of the strengths is that, it relates to what is truth. How many seminars do we need to explain what is truth? I think it goes back, one particular answer is, truth is about being able to speak what those in power don't want people to hear. And it's ultimately about creating spaces where everybody can get together and speak their truth. And everybody's got their particular perspective and their truth, and they've seen things from particular angles. And all we can do is to create those safe spaces where we can amalgamate those different stories and hopefully consolidate truth. But also, ultimately, that brings people together and to a great understanding of why, and to hopefully combats polarization. I appreciate that's not a full answer, and we can discuss it further.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to take one more question, I think, from the stream. Barai is going to ask a question from the stream. And then I'm afraid we really have to move on to the readings because we must leave time for the readings. So, Barai, there's a question that you wanted to raise?
So there's a couple that's come in, but I'll just focus on one. And I just wanted to also say that there's quite a lot of comments that have come in from Facebook and YouTube that are thanking you guys and commending the work that you have done on capturing the truth and the importance of creative writing to capture the resilience. And it's predominantly I'm assuming the Colombian community because it's in Spanish and I can't understand a lot of it. But the question is, do you think the Truth Commission finishing its work this June is a reflection that the work is finished? And also there's a continuation that says, or do you recognise that since the signature of the peace agreement in Cuba in 2006, it's still ongoing or is now even more brutal?
Okay. Shall I make a quick stab at that answer?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yes, no, I think this addresses the issue of the mandate, the fact that the Truth Commission's got a very limited time frame to work. But quickly to address that point, the Truth Commission can't have a very, very long mandate. Why? Because ultimately, the Truth Commission's report should be feeding in ultimately to the special jurisdiction process, and even to the ordinary justice system process. If we had a mandate of 10, 20 years, we wouldn't be able to feed into that. We can't make public what's going to be in the report until it's actually published. That's the reason why it's got a very limited time frame. However, the Truth Commission's work doesn't finish with the report. I think what I was saying, in fact, it starts the report. Hopefully this is a tool for civil society to carry on then campaigning, to then demand the changes that are required. So that's the challenge that we have, is making that public. And this is partly what I want to say at the end, and I didn't have time, but this is why the international community has got a crucial role to play as well, to accompany the new government. The new government takes office in August this year. We need international support to make sure that if that government, assuming it's a government that's supportive of the recommendations in the report, wants to take action, it will be confronting very powerful vested interests, and it will require political space to take decisive action. So we need support from politicians, academics, governments, etc., to create that space. But I'll better stop there because I'm running out of time.
And Sandra, Cristina, did you want to come in before we finish on that question, or has Peter said enough on that question? Okay. In which case, I'd like to ask you to thank our panelists for their very powerful papers and contributions, please. And I would like to thank the audience for their challenging questions, which are very important to this process, for sure. There will be an opportunity to ask more questions. There will be a reception after the readings. Please stick around, ask questions. We want to continue the conversation. There will now be a 3-minute break while we seamlessly move some chairs around and enable people who will be reading their contributions from the book, to come to the front. So there's going to be a 3-minute break. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, right. We are going to start again. We're not live streaming yet. Any second now. So, Peter will be introducing each reader in turn, and then when everybody is read, there will be an opportunity for 1 or 2 more questions about what we've heard. Okay, so I'm now going to hand over to Peter, and we can start streaming.
The first reading is a video by Mario Marin Cotrini, colombiano refugiado en el Reino Unido desde 1978, trabajador comunitario, asesor de inmigración a la comunidad latinoamericana y otras comunidades en Londres. Colombian, a refugee in the UK since 1978, community worker, immigration advisor to the Latin American and other communities in London. In the video, Mario Marin Cotrini reads his poem from chapter 1, Raíces, Roots, De Donde Vengo Yo, or Where Do I Come From?
¿Que de dónde vengo yo? Yo del país de las tinieblas vengo, del país de los muertos vengo yo, del país de los muertos más buenos y hermosos del mundo, del país de los magos y los vivos del rebusque, del país de los teguas, de los improvisadores, de los soñadores de chances y de loterías, del país del mañana vengo yo. Vengo del país de los jueces sin rostro y de los delincuentes con nombres y títulos, del país de las guerras y los armisticios, del país de los volcanes, de los sismos y los cataclismos, del país de las viudas y huérfanos, del país de los más tiernos asesinos. Vengo del país de los caciques y los demagogos, de los reinados y las ferias, de los cochices y los pambelés, del país de los rambos vengo yo. Vengo del país del miedo, del barrio de las víctimas, de la esquina de los velorios, de la cuadra de las desgracias, del quejido de los muertos vengo yo. De un país nebulosamente transparente vengo yo. Octubre 1993.
The following readings are from chapter 2 of the book, The Terrible Night, La Horrible Noche. The next reading is in person. Anabel Torres, colombiana, se exilió del país en 1987, es poeta, traductora, intérprete y editora. Ha escrito el prólogo y los textos que acompañan Exilio y Memoria. Colombian, left the country to go into exile in 1987. She's a poet, translator, interpreter, and editor. She wrote the prologue to the book Exile and Memory and its accompanying texts. Anabel Torres will read an excerpt from the introduction to chapter 2, La Horrible Noche, Terrible Night.
I walk a little bit funny. Oh, hola. The English is coming out somewhere on there or not? No. Oh, well, okay. I just don't want to cover it with my message here. Aparte de leyes tan surrealistas como insoportables, Colombia ha sido y sigue siendo... Ay, espera. Un sálvese quien pueda, como pueda. Mejor hacerte un bolsillo en la piel si andas sin bolsillos, porque sin la cédula no puedes salir. Y si eres alto, la policía comienza a pedir la cédula de malas maneras desde los 11 o 12 años. Al abuso extendido de la autoridad en Colombia se le incorpora el abuso de la fuerza antidisturbios ESMAD hoy, especializada, por ejemplo, en triturar a balín los ojos de jóvenes manifestantes pacíficos. Este capítulo, La Horrible Noche, es el más difícil de leer. Desapariciones forzosas, asesinatos, huidas a medianoche, atestiguan el salvaje dolor en el que llegan revolcados los perseguidos a sus países de acogida o tránsito, donde a veces son recibidos como criminales hasta probar su inocencia. Aquí tenemos relatos de injusticias y atropellos. Aquí se da nombre a nuestro CNN, se nombran los verdugos y sobre todo se nombran y apellidos nuestros próceres del futuro,
esas mujeres y hombres que con sus empeños y sus vidas truncadas han de ser inmortales cuando el país cese de obligarnos a oír sus 2 dosis diarias del himno y logre ser él mismo un canto colectivo, compartible y sonoro. Y me voy a tomar 20 segundos. Voy a leer un poema chiquitito, una pulga. Se llama Untada. Vengo de mi país, la guerra, rota de su costado y sigo untada de su sangre, de mi libro Poemas de la Guerra. Muchas gracias.
The next reading is in a video. Livia Franco, defensora de derechos humanos, hace parte de Familiares Europa Abya Yala de personas desaparecidas en Colombia y del Nodo Madrid. Human rights defender, she is a member of the European Abya Yala group of family members of the disappeared in Colombia and the Madrid hub. In the video, Livia Franco reads her poem Los 8 de Junio, every 8th of June.
Mis padres, Lilia y Hubert, fueron desaparecidos forzadamente el 8 de junio del año 2013 en zona de frontera entre Colombia y Venezuela. El año pasado, haciendo memoria de este hecho, escribí lo siguiente. Los 8 de junio. Pasaban desapercibidos los 8 de junio en nuestras vidas. Todo era posible, los sueños, los encuentros, las complicidades. La vida tenía un color brillante. El cielo y el mar profundamente azules acunaban nuestro encuentro. La lluvia sonaba a arrullo, los abrazos nos cargaban de esperanzas. Ahora llegan, repletos de desgarro, los días cargan la ausencia y sonreír desde adentro cuesta. La existencia pierde armonía con el pasar del tiempo. El agua dulce sabe a salada, la ilusión se vuelve amarga. Aquí seguimos, persistiendo, con el alma rota y los ojos apagados, sacando las fuerzas y el coraje que una vez vivimos a vuestro lado. Memorar vuestra existencia hace que vivir valga la pena.
The next reading is in person. Bárbara López, madre, abuela, poeta y escritora, defensora de derechos humanos, residente en Londres desde los años 80. Mother, grandmother, poet and writer, human rights defender, living in London since the 1980s. Bárbara López will read her poem Por la paz y por hablar de ella, for peace and speaking about peace.
Buenas tardes. Por la paz y por hablar de ella. Sus vidas condenadas al sufrimiento, negociaciones al día, convenios firmados, lo inaceptable por el bien común aceptado. Aún así, la muerte agazapada, escondida en las sombras de la inconsciencia, su certero golpe atina. Líderes sociales, valientes que no huyeron, sus palabras calando la tierra, sus ojos forzosamente cerrados antes de ver los frutos de su siembra. Repica el campanario, invocación al rezo. Lágrimas de impotencia emergen, la sangre tapiza los caminos, la esperanza se tambalea. Aún no cesa la horrible noche. Sus cuerpos en el sepulcro, sus anhelos en el pueblo, como semilla que crece en suelo fértil, el bien se empeña en germinar. Las verdades se hacen fastidiosas y se entorpecen las palabras. En este mundo de contradicciones, de ambición e impunidad, hay palabras que no se dicen, hay cosas que conviene callar. Pero la voz no se intimida y bien alto vuelve a hablar, en otra esquina, en otro lugar. No olvidamos a las víctimas, a los sobrevivientes, a los que se quedaron, a los que sin querer se marcharon, porque de todos se hace un país. La paz, el amor, la tolerancia se sienten amenazadas cada vez que una vida se pierde, cada vez que se tiñe de rojo el sendero que cruzamos. La libertad tan unida a la esperanza se ensombrece con la violencia desenfrenada y volvemos a caminar el camino de lo incierto. Honro a las almas penosamente asesinadas. Me duelen todas las desapariciones y las víctimas de casos más recientes, de aquellos seres de luz que añoraban respirar la paz supuestamente alcanzada y que hoy son estadísticas que se archivan y que nadie hace nada. Gracias.
The next reading is in person. Amparo Restrepo Vélez, antioqueña, hija entre 14, madre y abuela, graduada en Filosofía, Universidad Nacional Bogotá, poeta, polifacética y pragmática, exiliada en Inglaterra por 35 años. Aunque ha vivido en urbes por décadas, mi alma es aún campesina, con mucho apego al agua y la tierra. From the Department of Antioquia, Colombia, one of 14 children, mother and grandmother, graduate in philosophy from the Colombian National University, living in exile in England for the last 35 years. She says, although I have lived in the city for years, my soul is still that of a peasant, and I have a close connection with water and the land. Amparo Restrepo will read her poem, Por caminos de dolor o vida recobrada, along paths of pain or life recovered.
Buenas tardes a todos y muchas gracias. Este poema se llama Por caminos de dolor o vida recobrada, pero antes de leer esto voy a decir para quién es. Este poema fue escrito a mi esposo el día que lo encontraron encostalado con 2 tiros en la cabeza, amordazado y en un costal. Eso es en Bogotá en 1986.
Amparo, tal vez James puede traducir lo que acaba de decir.
Just to say that this poem was written on the day that they found my husband with 2 bullets in his head in a rubbish bag in Bogotá in 1986.
Lejos de la ciudad, en el Parque de la Florida. Por caminos de dolor o vida recobrada. No siempre había ganado, porque en el duro y cotidiano batallar también se pierde. Pero ayer ha recobrado la vida en batalla con la muerte y ha puesto en el futuro la mirada, aunque sombras y torturas sus ojos ya cegaran. Y ha lanzado un grito de esperanza, aunque mordazas sellaran su palabra, recobrando claramente las ideas que mi avala pudieron quebrantarlas. Él ha erguido solamente la cabeza. La moral ya estaba levantada. Bogotá, 11 de abril del 86. Amparo Restrepo Vélez.
The next reading is in a video. Betty Puerto Barrera, activista por la paz y defensora de derechos humanos, exiliada en Barcelona.
Hola, soy Betty Puerto Barrera y hoy quiero compartir un poema. Hola, soy Betty Puerto Barrera y hoy quiero compartir un poema de este libro, Exilio y el vuelo del colibrí, que es de mi autoría, y el poema se llama Pájaros, cuervos, buitres. Como una tormenta que nunca acaba, vuelan a ras de la tierra por las llanuras del Meta, por el Pacífico, por Arauca, el Putumayo y el Caribe. Se les ha sentido en lo alto de las montañas del Cauca, se camuflan en los ríos, en las selvas del Putumayo o del verde Catatumbo. Están ahí, acechando. ¿Quién? ¿Quiénes? Águilas negras, pájaros azules, cuervos verde olivo, buitres con camuflado. Vuelan por todas partes y atacan con sus garras depredadoras. Pero nadie los ve, nada los detiene. Vienen por ti, vienen por mí. vienen por todas.
The following readings are from Chapter 3, Añoranzas, Longing. The next reading is in person. Óscar Gómez Córdoba, defensor de derechos humanos e impanador psiconomadista, human rights defender and psychonomadic stitcher. Óscar Gómez Córdoba will read his poem Migración, Migration.
Shukran, Basma, for your words. Thanks the University of Kent for this invitation. And gracias, compañeras, por sus voces de dignidad. Migración. Salir por el todo. Cansados van los pasos, y en la tierra queda la huella de ese gesto. Una fila peregrina aparece. Sé de dónde salen, aún no saben dónde llegan. Llegar por la parte. Unos pies prisioneros del pasado, sin grilletes, miran y rastrean las nuevas calles, gris sobre azul, mientras una lágrima que baja abraza los recuerdos. Lo nuevo como siempre. Llegué donde los días se alargan o se acortan. Eso será la memoria de mi cuerpo, donde las palabras rebotan en oídos, los ajenos, los propios. Pero los pies rugosos ya reconocen nuevas texturas, un futuro con el pasado. Escuché el rumor de robles, de vientos y tormentas. A lo lejos un carnaval llegó, gaitas y tambores arribaron. Los pies, un viejo ritmo, nunca aprendido, ahora bailan. Gracias.
Bravo.
The next reading is in a video. Luz Elena Caicedo, cantante y compositora colombiana, Colombian singer and composer. In the video, Luz Elena Caicedo reads her poem, Migración, Migration.
Migración. He emigrado 3 veces, ninguna de ellas por voluntad propia. Las primeras 2 veces era aún niña, la tercera ya una adolescente. Todas las partidas fueron difíciles. Primero porque no quería irme, después porque no quería regresarme, pues cuando ya la normalidad impuesta se hacía costumbre, la incertidumbre llamaba de nuevo a la puerta y era necesario, una vez más, emprender un viaje y cambiar de ruta. Cuántas lágrimas, cuánta tristeza, cuántos procesos de cambio y aculturación donde la resignación era la única certeza. Pasaron muchos años para encontrarme a mí misma. La música y el baile se convirtieron en refugios. Allí encontré un alivio, un propósito, un punto de referencia y un sentido de pertenencia. Londres la considero ya mi casa, aunque de cuando en vez y en el momento más inesperado, la patria se hace sentir y me llama.
The next reading is also a video. María Victoria Cristancho, periodista y escritora, fruto de una migración forzada de sus padres por atreverse a defender los derechos de otros. Journalist and writer, product of parents who were forced to migrate because they dared to defend the rights of others. In the video, María Victoria Cristancho reads her text, Sin remitente, an anonymous letter.
Sin remitente, ¿quieres que te cuente cómo llegué acá y no sé por dónde comenzar? Tal vez podría contarte del día que llegó la carta con mi nombre subrayado en rojo vivo, rojo sangre, rojo de muerte. O mejor te cuento lo que le he dicho a quienes de entrada, imagino que solo hacen la pregunta para llenar espacios en medio de un té en tacita de porcelana en canastas de bizcocho. En tus ojos inquisidores veo que quieres la verdad, mi verdad. Te puedo contar del día que partí, de ese día que me guardé las lágrimas en el bolsillo de mi alma,
No quería que el adiós a mis taitas se mojaran del dolor de dejarlos, pero la carta era definitiva, no tenía opción. Salí de noche, una noche oscura sin estrellas. Caminé por el sendero que conocía de memoria. Llevaba una mochila de cabuya tejida por la viejita, una muda de camisa e interiores y la foto en el marco ocre en la que estábamos los viejos, tu tía Lucía y yo. No había tenido tiempo de más. También llevaba en el bolsillo la carta. No tenía remitente, pero yo sabía que la había escrito don Simón. De eso no tenía ninguna duda. La semana anterior el viejo marrullero me había saludado en la tienda de la Lola, donde iba casi religiosamente los viernes a tomarme las frías después de arriar el ganado. Suena mucho, pero eran las 3 vaquitas lecheras, Rosita, Pepa y la nena, que nos daban el sustento para la jornada. Don Simón me convidó la Bavaria y yo la acepté con reserva, mientras posaba en mi hombro esa mano larga y áspera. Mijo, yo lo conozco, me dijo. Y luego de un rato me dijo que tenía un negocito donde podía ganar 10 veces más en una hora que todo lo que pagaban por la leche de mis vacas. Fue al grano. Era una carga fácil, 2 kilitos. Fui contundente, mija. Prefiero ser pobre que ensuciarme las manos con esa basura. El hombre se enfureció y me la juró. Por eso, cuando la carta me llegó, sabía que no tenía otro camino que escapar.
The next reading is also a video. Carlos Cruz, activista comunitario por los derechos de los y las trabajadoras inmigrantes, defensor de derechos humanos, coordinador del programa de educación de trabajadores inmigrantes, UNWEP, residente en Londres desde 1991. Community activist and defender of the rights of immigrant workers, human rights defender, coordinator of the United Migrant Workers Education Project, resident in London since 1991. In the video, Carlos Cruz reads his poem, Hermanos del Exilio, Brothers in Exile.
Hermanos del exilio. En invierno, cuando abro la ventana, me invade una ráfaga de hastío. Intento ver el mundo por entre la espesa oscuridad, pero afuera hace frío. Entre esas 4 paredes me debato con fiera enjaulada. Entre esas calles grises y sinuosas me siento acorralado. Entre esa inicua cotidianidad, la vida yace amordazada. Vegetal viviente, sedentario inmóvil. Tantos años de frío la existencia, cuánta soledad, cuánta tristeza, cuánto tiempo ausente. He querido volver al punto de partida, al día soleado, a la ciudad pequeña, al olor a tierra mojada que germina los más deliciosos frutos de América, a la verde geografía inmensa que alimenta la cotidiana la codicia de sátrapas del sur, del norte y de occidente, a la tierra rica y fértil que aún resiste el saqueo de 500 años. He querido volver a continuar mi vida, suspendida en un deplorable momento del pasado, a retomar los hilos de una lucha 1000 veces aplazada, al encuentro conmigo mismo y con mi pueblo. Este sueño se ha cumplido no en un avión, sino en la cama. También allí termina el sueño cuando amanece. Rompamos ese sueño, amigos, hermanos del exilio. Carlos Cruz, London, 9 de marzo de 2002. Muchas gracias.
The next reading is in person. Nubia Torres Victoria, víctima del exilio forzado desde hace 26 años, refugiada política en España, enfermera de profesión, egresada de la Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, migrante en Inglaterra desde 2015. Forced into exile 26 years ago, political refugee in Spain, a nurse by profession, a graduate of the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, a migrant in England since 2015. Nubia Torres Victoria will read an excerpt of her text, El Exilio, Exile.
Gracias por estar aquí. El exilio. Exiliarse es volver a nacer adulto, sin madre que te cuide. Es vivir lleno de nostalgias hasta que te adaptas. Llorar el duelo de los seres queridos sin un abrazo de consuelo, sin compañía. Exiliarse es volver a empezar de cero, tener que demostrar lo que eres 2 veces, tus habilidades, experiencia de trabajo y trayectoria dejan de existir. No eres nadie hasta que vuelves a ser alguien. Exiliarse es tener hijos que se crían sin primos, sin abuelos, sin tíos, hijos que no tienen claro de dónde son. El exilio es a veces temporal y otras veces es un viaje sin retorno que te sacude la existencia para siempre, sin tú haberlo planeado. Exiliarse es vivir la historia de otros, vivir los acontecimientos de un entorno que no es el tuyo y los de tu país, verlos de lejos, siempre tratando de mantener vivos en la mente los olores, sabores y colores de tu infancia. Exiliarse es siempre soñar con volver, imaginar reencuentros con familia, amigos y vecinos que dejaste. Exiliarse es ir en contra de lo que te dicen, que tú siempre decides tu futuro con las decisiones que tomas y que estas decisiones marcan tu destino. En el exilio forzado, otros deciden por ti.
The next reading is in person. Marta Inestroza, abogada de derechos humanos, refugiada, integrante del colectivo Mujer Diáspora, Mesa Étnica Internacional y Pueblito Paisa, CIC. Marta Inestroza, human rights lawyer, refugee, member of Women's Diaspora and International Ethnic Working Group, and Pueblito Paisa, CIC. Marta Inestroza will read an excerpt of her text, Elvia.
Muchas gracias por esta oportunidad. Este monólogo fue escrito en memoria de Elvia Regina Cuello Hernández, la tía, mi tía. Soy la tía, así me dicen todos en este pueblo. Me dijeron que estoy en la lista, dizque por colaboradora de la guerrilla, pero no es verdad, yo soy la voz de mi comunidad. Recuerdo la algarabía de la noche anterior, la casa llena de sobrinos, ese 7 de julio de 1996. Le había dicho a Tere, vete tranquila, que yo me voy mañana apenas dejé todo organizado. Ella insistió, me fuera con ella para Medellín. Ese día estaba oscuro, todavía se sentía el frío de la madrugada. Eran tal vez las 4:30, tal vez las 5 de la mañana. Todo estaba quieto, todo dormido. Escuché ruidos. Abran la puerta. De repente, plum, cayó al piso como una armadura de hierro la puerta. ¿Quién es el Viacuello?, dijo con arrogante voz un hombre. Yo soy el Viacuello, dije yo. No, ella no es el Viacuello, soy yo, dije. ¿Qué quieren? ¿Por qué me van a matar? Están en un error. ¿Por qué me gritan? ¿Por qué me insultan? ¿Por qué me pegan? No, por favor. Oigo gritos, súplicas, escucho en vano los ruegos de mis vecinos. Me ultrajan, me humillan, me arrastran. Una multitud de hombres, unos 30 y 35 o 40, armados hasta los dientes. ¿Quiénes son ustedes? No me maten aquí, frente de mi hija, les dije. Camine para el puente, respondió él. Mi mirada recorrió los rostros de mi gente, de mi casa, y la mejilla de mi hija donde puse el beso de despedida. El hombre hambriento de sangre me empujó adelante y pude sentir la tierra humedecida por el rocío de la mañana en mis pies. Caminamos 100 metros, seguido de otros hombres, y pude sentir el olor que sale del cuerpo familiarizado con la muerte, del que se deleita con el sufrimiento ajeno. Parecía yo el payaso en un circo de locos desalmados. La bala de fusil me encontró de rodillas orando. Cerré mis ojos y dejé este mundo. Pero desperté en un mundo diferente, con un vestido de coloridas flores Y quiero que sepan que donde estoy ahora existe justicia. Estoy feliz al lado de mi hija, felicidad de la que ustedes, asesinos, no podrán disfrutar, ni aquí ni allá, ni ayer, ni hoy, ni nunca. Gracias.
Marta Nestroza started that text by pointing out that it was written in honor of her aunt Elvia. The next person to read is in person, Elma Ospina Pérez, medioambientalista, ama de casa, madre de mis hijos, además madre de mis 8 hermanos, quienes quedaron a mi cargo a la muerte de nuestra madre. Reside en Londres. Elma Ospina Pérez, environmentalist, housewife, mother to my children and also to 8 siblings who were left in my care when our mother died, she says. She lives in London. Elma Ospina Pérez will read 3 texts in the book Exodus.
Buenas tardes.
Éxodo. Mis abuelos maternos salieron huyendo de Quebrada Grande, dejando atrás sus 2 fincas en las montañas del Tolima. Mis abuelos paternos, en cambio, perdieron sus tierras porque las oficinas antiguas se equivocaban mucho o hacían lo que se les daba la gana. El exilio es estar en un mundo totalmente desconocido, es mezclarse con el resto de las etnias, lenguas y culturas milenarias. Luego de mucho tiempo, tengo claras 2 cosas. Primero, a los colombianos nos falta un mayor sentido de pertenencia. Y segundo, nos sobra la actitud de dejarle todo al corazón de Jesús y a las virgencitas. Gracias.
The following readings are from chapter 4, Resilience. The next reading is in person. Sandra Dixon, a chemical engineer, human rights activist. She's one of the founders of SOS Colombia, and as we pointed out at the beginning, she worked closely with the Truth Commission and was one of the coordinators of the series of writing workshops which led to the production of Exilio y Memoria. And so she's going to read her poem La Madre Nuestra, Our Mother Who Art In.
Okay, this poem is parallel of Our Father, the prayer. Okay, la Madre Nuestra. Madre nuestra, que estás en el sudor del campesino que te labra, benditas sean tus selvas, tus valles y montañas. Venga a nosotros tu reino, pero no concentrado en pocas manos, ni habitado por escasas vacas. Que no se siga haciendo la voluntad de unos cuantos poderosos, ni de las multinacionales que sin compasión te explotan. Que no se haga la voluntad de los que arrasan tus bosques para convertirlos en papeles verdes, ni en la tierra ni en el cielo. Mejor que todos tengamos un pedacito de ti y podamos tener el pan nuestro de cada día. No nos dejes caer en el olvido y nunca nos dejes olvidar a nuestros deudores. Amén. Amén.
The next reading is a video. Manuel Antonio Belandia Mora. He introduces himself in Spanish at the beginning of the video. So what he says is, he has been a member of the Colombian gay rights movement for 45 years. He lived as a refugee in Spain for 12 years and 3 years ago returned to Colombia, one more victim of the Colombian armed conflict. In the video, Manuel Antonio Belandia Mora reads his poem Saldo en Rojo, in the red.
Hace 45 años fundé el Movimiento de Liberación Homosexual en Colombia. Durante 12 años viví como refugiado en España y hace 3 años soy retornado. Una víctima más del conflicto armado en Colombia. Saldo en rojo. Se me entrecorta el aliento, tengo el corazón arrugado, el ceño me ha quedado fruncido, la respiración acelerada, mi puño cerrado atrapa la ira. Me duelen los jóvenes, sus esperanzas que no se pierden, su empeño por hacerse escuchar, los oídos sordos, las bocas que se abren para crear acuerdos sabiendo que expresan mentiras. La historia se repite jornada tras jornada, maltrato tras maltrato. Salen a la calle, marchan esperanzados en que algo puede cambiar. Prefieren creer que esta noche regresarán, que un tiro no cercenará su vida para siempre. La resistencia es su triunfo, la paciencia su poder, la persistencia su legado. Resisten ante las cortinas de humo. El miedo no logra derribarlos, no temen al vandalismo estatal. Ellos sí saben de diálogos horizontales. Arcoíris ondeantes, transgresores de géneros y cuerpos, carcomedores del sistema. Corazón coraza, rompe barreras. Impulso que nadie puede frenar.
The next reading is in a video. Elizabeth Santander, defensora de derechos humanos, integrante de Familiares Europa Apoyala de Desaparecidos en Colombia, esposa de Marino Escobar Aroca, detenido y desaparecido por el Estado colombiano el 22 de enero de 1987. Human rights defender, member of the European Apoyala group of family members of the disappeared in Colombia, wife of Marino Escobar Aroca, who was detained and disappeared by the Colombian state on 22nd of January 1987. In the video, Elizabeth reads her poem, Marino Escobar Aroca.
Marino Escobar, tu memoria es la que ha guiado mi destino. Eres el hombre nuevo, el poema de mi vida. Eres mi historia. Para ti que me enseñaste el amor y la entrega por tu pueblo. Te desaparecieron junto con tus sueños y no lo acepté. Entonces te busqué tus sueños, los busqué en la tierra, escarbé en ella, con mis manos, con mis pies, con mis dientes, y no los encontré. Los busqué en el mar, me sumergí en lo profundo del océano, los busqué en cada gota de agua y no los encontré. Los busqué en el cielo, volé al firmamento, dibujé tu rostro en las estrellas, me abracé al infinito y lloré tu nombre y no los encontré. Los busqué en el tiempo, en mis largos años de angustias y tormentos, los busqué en mi pasión, en mis amores y no los encontré. Entonces volví a preguntar, ¿dónde están? ¿A dónde los han llevado? Desperté de mis terribles pesadillas y encontré tus sueños. Los encontré junto a los míos, dormían dentro de mí, ahí en lo más profundo de mi alma, ahí donde jamás lograrán desaparecerte. Elizabeth Santander, Londres, enero 2006.
Next reading is in a video. Camila Marin Restrepo, hija de exiliados políticos, antropóloga de UCL y defensora de derechos humanos. Daughter of political refugees, graduated in anthropology from UCL and a human rights defender. In the video, Camila Marin reads her poem, Mis Ancestras, My Ancestors.
Hi, my name is Camila Marin Restrepo and I'm here to read one of my poems, which is Ancestras. I wrote this poem in Spanish and yeah, I hope you enjoy it, so here goes. Mis ancestras son mujeres sabias que trabajan la tierra, que conocen las plantas sanadoras de la cordillera. Son mujeres que han vivido destierros y guerras. y han enterrado a sus muertos huyendo de balaceras. Son mujeres que han guardado silencio por temor, pero han podido sanar sus dolores con amor, con sus manos sembrando semillas y de su frente brotando sudor. Mis ancestras son mujeres que no han buscado venganzas, siempre inculcando paz en sus crianzas, y han reconstruido sus historias, tejiendo memorias, y de ese linaje soy yo. Gracias.
Another reading in the video, Nelly Mosquera, conductora del programa radial Ventana Comunitaria, vicepresidenta y orientadora de la organización Una Voz de Ayuda, integrante del coro latinoamericano. Presenter of the radio program Community Window, vice president and director of the organization One Voice Helps, and member of the Latin American Chorus. In the video, Nelly Mosquera reads her poem, Regreso, Return.
Regreso. Ha regresado mujer y estás ausente, deambulando por la casa, en busca del baúl de los recuerdos, en busca del pasado. ¿Qué y por qué te han cambiado, mujer que no te reconoces? ¿Dónde quedó tu cabello negro y brillante como una noche estrellada? ¿Qué hicieron de tu piel bronceada por el sol de esta región, que hoy luce blanca y transparente, como si por años hubieses estado en remojo? Ah, y tus palabras, tus bellas palabras, hermosa lírica de tu canción, tampoco están ya en tu voz, y de tu acento ya no queda rastro. Escucho en tu cuarto pasos de desvelo y pienso para mis adentros, que estás aquí pero que estás ausente, que todo en ti ha cambiado, que ya no te reconoces ni reconoces las verdes montañas ni el río cristalino que baña la ciudad. Rompe ya tu silencio, mujer, y dinos, ¿acaso dejaste tu vida en esas lejanías? Habla, mujer, sin prisa y sin miedo. Habla, no te atormentes, que pronto volverás a ser tú misma, pronto volverás a tus orígenes, a tus raíces, a tu verde y vasta tierra que te vio nacer, a los Andes, a la magia que atrae a quien regresa, a ti, mujer, que regresas a lo tuyo.
And the last video is a reading by Rodrigo Restrepo reads the poem Flores Eternas, Everlasting Flowers, by Camilo Restrepo Valencia in homage to his sister Marta Gisela Restrepo Valencia, or Inés, and Carmenza Cardona Londoño, Norma, La Chiqui, a few days after hearing of their deaths in combat. Camilo was killed by members of the State Security Forces in Cali on 10th August 1982 in the presence of his mother. This murder forced part of the Restrepo Valencia family into exile.
Flores eternas. A Inés y Norma, caídas en combate en el Chocó el 25 de abril. Un día de abril, la niña para nosotros, en realidad la mujer, vestida de verde olivo, enfrentó la vida, feliz, optimista. El corazón lleno de ternura, el rostro radiante de amor, venció la vida y la muerte. Bregó por la vida, vivió en la muerte con heroicos patriotas.
Vivirán en la selva y en el corazón de los pobres. En todo hombre y mujer, seguirá en toda compañera, nunca morirá. Se equivocaron los lobos, la vergüenza de ellos, el orgullo nuestro. Su dulce voz continuará escuchándose en los barrios y universidades, en las selvas, las fábricas y los hogares.
Cuando se ha vivido así, nunca se muere. Estaremos a tu altura, compañera, siempre alegres y seguros de victoria. Camilo, mayo 13 del 81.
Before we'd got the translations up, Annabelle read a very short poem of hers in Spanish that she's done her own. She's a translator herself, so she just wanted me to read it out in English. It was, I am from my homeland, war, broken off its side, and I am spattered in its blood.
Well, thank you so much for those readings. They're powerful and affecting, and they tell us the truth of the situation. So thank you very much for your readings, and thank you very much, Peter, for hosting this. I don't know if you want to just open up to questions, or it feels to me like this might be an appropriate moment just to ask a couple of questions.
That's fine. That'd be. Anyone? I don't know if anyone in the room's got any questions, or if any questions are coming from the public online, o any further thoughts that anyone has. Si alguien tiene algún comentario, alguna reflexión, están sin.
Just one comment. Thank you so much. We are connected. We are all connected in our causes and in our struggles. Thank you so much. They were really very powerful, very emotional. I can relate. I can connect. And I support you as a human being, as Palestinian, who understands very well. Thank you.
Solo para que los que no escucharon una pequeña, bueno, igual no voy a traducir todo, pero que Basma se siente conectada, como Palestina quiere ofrecer su apoyo y se siente conectada con ustedes, ¿no?
Okay.
No sé, anybody else have a question? Or before, just to give people time to think, I just want to quickly thank everybody for their support. And David heard from the Department of English, but as a member of the special research team working on migration issues at Kent University, for all the support in putting this in this event together. Thanks to the technical team from KMTV for all their hard work putting the technical stuff together. To James Lupton for all his translation work before and today. Can I thank all the people who aren't here today but produced videos for the event? It was a lot of hard work, technical challenges for many people. To all the Colombian exile people that made the journey to be here today and their great support and offering to read. And I know for many it was a big challenge and possibly a bit nerve-wracking, but great thanks for that support. To Antonio at the back there who offered to bring several of the people over in his car and made the effort, and Antonio has been one of the key supporters of the work of the Truth Commission over the last couple of years in the UK as a member of the Exile community. And Marta, ¿tienes algo?
Yo quisiera un cortico agradecer mucho pues a los que están acá tanto y agradecer mucho a este proyecto de poesía, porque aunque he entrevistado en el grupo de mujeres a mujeres víctimas de violencia y he sido entrevistadora de la Comisión de la Verdad, no había hablado de este episodio porque no hubo tiempo, porque después el día a día y después porque he seguido trabajando en derechos humanos y no había sacado ese dolor que representó no solo para mi familia y para mí el asesinato de mi tía, y me ha servido muchísimo honrarla honrarla porque ella se lo merece y es la oportunidad que me han dado de trabajarlo con mi familia, que han leído el monólogo y que hemos llorado juntos y que sabíamos que los que están en Colombia por temor no habían podido o no pueden hacerlo. Pero ha sido muy bonito, muchas gracias por esta oportunidad.
Please do, yes.
I'd just like to thank everybody who's attended this event, for the translation, everybody who's come here, and also to express my gratitude to the Poetry Project, because though I've been involved in the Women's Victims Group and I've been an interviewer for the Truth Commission, I'd never actually spoken about these experiences that I spoke about in this in the piece that I read today, because I haven't had time, because I've been absorbed in day-to-day activities, but also because it's been a difficult thing to talk about. It's been difficult to talk about these memories in person, both for me and for my family. So it's actually been very important to all of us to honour her in this way. We worked on this as a family, and so it's provided us a real opportunity to reflect on who Elia was and to shed tears together, and we're aware that many people in Colombia don't have the luxury to be able to do that. So it's been a lovely experience. Thank you very much.
That seems to me to be the right note to conclude on. Yeah. So let's take our questions and our conversations outside of the room. As if by magic, there ought now to be a glass of wine or a glass of juice or some refreshment waiting for us. So thank you to everybody who's taken part, thank you to everyone who has attended, and thank you to KMTV for making this possible. Thank you.
I just want to say, there is a link. This is an e-book, and we haven't provided a link, but we can provide a link. There's a bit of a technical problem with the book that's online at the moment, but perhaps we can make the link available to the special research group and perhaps to KMTV, or if anyone wants the book, they can give me their email and I can send a link. That might be the easiest way of doing it. That's great. Thanks a lot.